It's not everyone. You don't feel drained around everyone. That's the first thing to understand. There are people you can be around for hours and feel completely fine. You talk naturally. You don't think about what you're saying. You don't feel tension. You don't replay the conversation afterward. You just exist in the interaction without effort. And then there are other people where even a short interaction feels heavy. You walk away feeling off. You think about what you said, you question how it landed, you feel mentally tired in a way that doesn't match what actually happened. And nothing obvious went wrong. No argument, no conflict, no clear reason for the exhaustion. Just a conversation. But something about it drains you, and the reason it drains you has nothing to do with the length of the interaction or the surface level content. It has everything to do with what you are doing internally while it's happening. You aren't just talking, you are managing the entire interaction. When you're around people who drain you, you're not simply participating in a conversation. You're managing it in real time. You're paying attention to their tone, their facial expressions, their reactions, the timing of what you say, the way you say it, and how it might be interpreted. You're not just responding, you're calculating. You're anticipating how your words will land before you even say them. You're deciding whether something is worth saying or whether it might create tension. You are constantly adjusting your delivery to keep the interaction smooth. That creates a layer of effort that most people do not consciously recognize. It feels normal while you are doing it, but it is not neutral. It is work. And the more variables you are tracking, the more energy it requires. This is why you can leave those interactions feeling exhausted even though nothing dramatic happened. Because the entire time, you were not just present. You were actively managing the environment. The drain comes from micro adjustments, not big events. Most people think exhaustion comes from conflict or intensity, but that is not what drains you in these situations. It is the accumulation of small, almost invisible adjustments. You slightly change your tone to sound more agreeable. You soften your opinion so it does not come across as too strong. You hold back a reaction that you would normally express. You laugh at something that is not actually funny. You avoid a topic that you know could create tension. You explain something more than necessary just to make sure it is understood correctly. Each of these actions is small. None of them feel significant on their own, but together they create a continuous stream of effort. And because they are subtle, you do not register them as work while they are happening. But your system does. It is tracking, adjusting, filtering, and recalibrating the entire time. That constant adjustment is what drains you. Not the conversation itself, but the invisible work required to maintain it. Your nervous system is slightly activated the entire time. Around people who do not drain you, your system is relaxed. You're not scanning for problems. You're not preparing for reactions. You're not holding tension in your body. You are simply present. But around certain people, your nervous system shifts into a subtle state of activation. Not enough to feel like anxiety, but enough to create tension. You are slightly more alert, slightly more aware, slightly more controlled. And that state stays active the entire interaction. It does not spike and drop. It stays consistent. And that consistency is what drains you, because your system is never fully at rest. It's always running in the background, monitoring the situation. And when that continues for even a short period of time, it creates fatigue. Not because something intense happened, but because nothing allowed your system to relax. You are operating as a filtered version of yourself. One of the clearest signs of energy drain is that you are not fully yourself in those interactions. You are a version of yourself, a controlled version, a filtered version, a version that is adjusted to fit the environment. You say less than you normally would. You think more before speaking. You hold back certain reactions. You stay within boundaries that you would not normally impose on yourself. And maintaining that version requires effort because it is not natural. It is constructed. You are actively deciding how to show up instead of just showing up. And anything that requires constant construction will eventually exhaust you. This is why you can feel relief when the interaction ends. Not because something bad happened, but because you no longer have to maintain that version. Cognitive load is what you are actually feeling. There's a psychological explanation for this. Cognitive load, the amount of mental effort required to process and manage a situation. The more factors you have to track, the higher the load. In these interactions, the load increases because you are not just listening and responding. You are analyzing tone, predicting reactions, filtering your words, and adjusting your behavior. That creates a constant stream of mental processing. And your brain is not designed to sustain that level of effort without fatigue. So by the time the interaction ends, your system is depleted. Not because of what was said, but because of how much you had to process while it was happening. You are trying to prevent negative outcomes in real time. Most of this behavior comes from a protective instinct. You are trying to prevent something, conflict, misunderstanding, rejection, tension. You are adjusting in real time to avoid those outcomes. You're smoothing things over before they become a problem. You're managing the interaction to keep it stable. And while that can make the conversation feel easier on the surface, it increases the internal cost because you are taking responsibility for the entire interaction. You are not just participating, you are controlling. And control requires energy. The more you try to prevent, the more you have to manage. And the more you manage, the more you drain. This is why you feel off afterward. This is why you leave those interactions feeling off. Not because something obvious went wrong, but because you were carrying the entire weight of managing it. You were monitoring, adjusting, filtering, and preventing the entire time. And once it ends, your system drops out of that state. And that drop is what you feel. That contrast between being activated and being relaxed. And now you understand that the drain is not coming from them directly. It is coming from how much you are doing internally while you are around them. And if that does not change, the pattern repeats every time. The shift is not fixing them. It is reducing your engagement load. The mistake most people make is trying to figure the other person out, trying to communicate better, trying to manage them more effectively. But that keeps you in the same pattern because you are still taking responsibility for the interaction. The shift is not external. It is internal. It is reducing how much you do. You do not need to respond to everything. You do not need to explain everything. You do not need to manage every reaction. Let small things pass. Let silence exist. Let the interaction breathe without constantly filling it. The less you manage, the less you drain. Practical control. How to reduce drain in real time. This is where it becomes actionable. When you feel the urge to adjust, pause instead. Do not immediately respond. Let the moment sit. That reduces automatic behavior. When you feel the need to explain, stop early. Say what you need to say and end it. Do not add layers. When someone brings intensity, do not match it. Stay neutral. Let them operate at their level without pulling you into it. When the conversation starts to extend beyond what is necessary, end it. You do not need to stay longer than required. These are small shifts, but each one reduces load, and when you combine them, the difference is immediate. Energy is not about people. It is about how you operate around them. This is the most important understanding. It is not about certain people having some kind of draining energy. It is about how you behave around them, the role you step into, the amount of effort you apply. That is what determines the outcome. Because you can be around the same person and feel different depending on how you engage. And once you realize that, you stop feeling controlled by the situation. You start controlling your output. Stability comes from being the same person in every room. The goal is not to manage people better, it is to remain consistent, to not become a different version of yourself depending on who you are around, because that is what creates the drain, the switching, the adjusting, the filtering. When you stay consistent, the load drops because you are no longer constructing yourself in real time. You're just operating. And that stability reduces energy cost across every interaction. The less you manage, the less you drain. You're not drained because of them. You are drained because of how much you are doing while you are around them. The constant adjustment, the monitoring, the filtering, the internal control, that is the cost. And once you reduce that, everything changes. The interaction feels lighter, shorter, easier, because you are no longer carrying the entire weight of managing it. And the less you manage, the less you drain. Thank you for watching. This is MindStickz,